An elderly black woman, peacefully knitting in a park, becomes the target of a racist police officer's assumptions, but little does he know. Her son is an FBI agent who won't let this slide. Evelyn Johnson sat on a worn bench in Riverside Park, basking in the soft afternoon sun. The golden autumn leaves rustled gently around her as she clicked her knitting needles, working on a new scarf for her grandson. This park was her peaceful escape, a quiet corner away from the busy city life. As she knitted, Evelyn thought of her son, Derek, who was always concerned for her safety. He often reminded her to stay vigilant and avoid unsafe areas. He meant well, of course. After all, he was an FBI agent. Evelyn couldn't help but smile when she thought about how much he had grown and how protective he'd become, especially after her husband passed away. Today, Evelyn felt completely at peace. That is, until she noticed a police officer standing across the park, staring at her intently. She felt his gaze but decided to ignore it, focusing back on her knitting. However, the officer didn't look away. In fact, he began walking toward her, his expression tense and suspicious. It seemed like he had already judged her before even speaking a word. Evelyn held his gaze, sensing the hostility behind his eyes. She had seen this look many times before, but instead of showing fear, she kept her face calm and welcoming, determined to respond with grace. "Good afternoon, ma'am," the officer said, his tone sharp. "May I ask what you're doing here?" Evelyn paused, then held up her knitting needles with a gentle smile. "Just knitting," she replied. "It's such a nice day. I thought I'd enjoy it in the park." The officer didn't seem convinced. He glanced around as if expecting to catch her doing something illegal. "I haven't seen you around here before," he said, his hand resting on his belt, a gesture that felt more threatening than casual. "I come here often," Evelyn said calmly. "It's a beautiful park." The officer's eyes narrowed. "Do you have any ID on you, ma'am?" Evelyn frowned slightly. "Is there a reason I need to show ID just for sitting in a public park?" "You fit the description of someone we're looking for," the officer replied sharply. To him, her only crime was being a black woman sitting alone. Evelyn's heart began to race, but she refused to let him see her fear. "I'm just here to knit," she said, her voice steady. The officer's face twisted in irritation. "Look, ma'am, we can either do this the easy way or make it difficult. Stand up," he demanded. Evelyn sighed and slowly rose from the bench, carefully setting her knitting supplies aside. She noticed a few people nearby watching the scene unfold, but no one stepped in. They just stood there, silently observing. "Turn around," the officer ordered. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Is this really necessary?" she asked, keeping her voice even. "Turn around," he repeated, his tone leaving no room for argument. Evelyn complied, turning slowly. The officer pulled out his handcuffs, snapping them around her wrists tightly. The cold metal bit into her skin, filling her with a wave of humiliation. Despite this, she kept her head held high, refusing to show him how much it hurt. As he led her to his patrol car, he muttered, "We'll sort this out at the station." Evelyn sighed and slowly rose from the bench, carefully setting her knitting supplies aside. She noticed a few people nearby watching the scene unfold, but no one stepped in. They just stood there, silently observing. "Turn around," the officer ordered. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Is this really necessary?" she asked, keeping her voice even. "Turn around," he repeated, his tone leaving no room for argument. Evelyn complied, turning slowly. The officer pulled out his handcuffs, snapping them around her wrists tightly. The cold metal bit into her skin, filling her with a wave of humiliation. Despite this, she kept her head held high, refusing to show him how much it hurt. As he led her to his patrol car, he muttered, "We'll sort this out at the station." Evelyn said nothing, keeping her calm. But inside, she was boiling with anger. Her thoughts drifted to her son, Derek. If he knew what was happening, he'd be furious. Inside the back of the patrol car, Evelyn watched the city pass by, her wrists aching from the tight cuffs. She wondered how far this officer would go with his baseless assumptions. They arrived at the police station, and she was led through the main hall. Other officers glanced at her but quickly looked away, as if her presence was an inconvenience. At the booking desk, the officer, whose name tag read Officer Reynolds, handed over her ID, muttering something about suspicious behavior. The desk officer looked puzzled as he checked her ID but didn't say anything, just typing her information into the system. Evelyn felt the weight of the situation pressing down on her, but she stayed composed, knowing her son would find her soon. And she was right. Moments later, the door to the interview room swung open, and in walked Derek, tall and confident, dressed sharply in a suit. The entire room fell silent, sensing the shift in power. Derek's eyes softened when he saw his mother, but his face hardened as he turned to Officer Reynolds. "Excuse me," Derek said, his voice cold. "Can you explain why my mother is here?" Reynolds stammered, clearly caught off guard. She was acting suspiciously in the park, sir. She fit a description." Derek's jaw clenched. "A description of what, exactly?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. Reynolds hesitated, struggling to find an answer. "There were reports of suspicious individuals. So you saw an elderly woman knitting in the park and decided she was suspicious?" Derek interrupted, his voice filled with disbelief. Reynolds looked down, embarrassed. "I was just doing my job," he mumbled. "Your job?" Derek repeated, his voice cutting through the room. "Your job is to serve and protect, not to harass innocent people. This woman," he pointed at his mother, "is the most law-abiding person you will ever meet. And you dragged her here without cause because you couldn't see past your own prejudice." Reynolds' face turned red. He couldn't meet Derek's eyes. Derek stepped closer. "Get those cuffs off, now!" Reynolds fumbled with his keys, his hands shaking as he unlocked the cuffs. Evelyn rubbed her wrists as Derek watched, his expression stern. "Do you have any idea who she is?" Derek asked. "Did it ever occur to you that you might be wrong?" The room was silent, filled with tension. Derek turned back to his mother, his voice softer now. "Are you okay, Mom?" Evelyn managed a small smile. "I'm fine, Derek. Thank you for coming." Derek nodded, then faced Reynolds one last time. "I'll be filing a formal complaint against you. This isn't over." As Derek guided his mother out of the station, the officers watched in silence, knowing they had witnessed a moment of reckoning. Outside, the cool air was refreshing. Evelyn took a deep breath, feeling the weight lift from her shoulders. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," Derek said, his voice filled with regret. Evelyn shook her head. "It's not your fault, Derek. This is just the way things are. But thank you for standing up for me." He sighed. "It shouldn't be like this." She patted his cheek affectionately. "No, it shouldn't. But maybe people like you can help change things." Derek nodded, his resolve clear. "I won't let this slide, Mom." As they drove away, Evelyn felt hopeful. With her son by her side, she knew they could face anything together. If you found this story meaningful, please subscribe to the Story Hub and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching.